Hello, everyone. Happy November 1st. Welcome to our product analytics group sync. And we'll be going with, I'm going to hold on, get my tabs kind of organized here. And then share the board so we can review the build board. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. And we
You've got the agenda document open.
Yep. That is the intent, because I don't want anyone else to see how many other tabs I have open in my main window. So
all the contents.
Well, you know how I am with sensitive information. So yes. Cool. So we've got two open issues that aren't in a workflow state. I don't know if we want to cover these at all, but we've got make an internal announcement about dog fooding plans. Sam, is there anything new here we want to talk about?
No, overall got mostly positive reception. Everything I got from it was in the public thread, so no like special DMs from anyone. So really encouraging, some good questions in the discussion as well. So we can take those and put those into an FAQ document or product documentation somewhere. For the most part, I think this issue, I'll probably leave it open for another day or so in case people have comments on the feedback issue. Otherwise, I'll close it once that's done.
Awesome.
And
cool.
Like from me especially, that went so well. So congrats, Sam, because those kind of announcements company-wide can attract some like negative feedback, generally speaking, anything privacy related. And as far as I could tell, there was questions, but nobody actively saying this isn't okay. So yeah, handled amazingly well. Yeah. Thank you.
We haven't enabled it on .com yet. Give it time.
Yes, that will probably be the more controversial version of the announcement. But this was a good proxy for hopefully it won't be too bad.
I guess it'll be good to see how many people are running ad blockers or just running the DNT or GPC, the privacy signals, to see if they'll even notice. But
I reckon amongst internal GitLab users, I reckon it's going to be like 50% or more.
Yeah. So
I've had to turn mine off to be able to work in this group.
Yeah, actually, I think I had to figure out how to turn off GPC on Chrome for whatever reason, since we had added that. But anyways, cool. So yeah, I think that's good progress. Obviously, there's more announcements to come. It's a long journey in terms of our communications there, and then it'll get more exciting, especially once we get more public about it and generate some excitement externally. But no, it's exciting nonetheless. All right, and then the other issue, we have retrieve project dashboard list via REST.
Yes,
Max, anything here?
This has got a workflow label, but it's solution validation. Probably should be planning breakdown, I guess. So I've got a 0.6 or 0.6 in the agenda. We can talk more about this.
Sure.
Yeah, not a lot to say right now.
Would you prefer it? Should we just add a solution validation workflow label?
Yeah,
or do you
move it to planning breakdown, because I think that's kind of what it is.
Okay.
Somewhere between the two. It's kind of a figuring out what it is we're going to do kind of issue.
Got it. All right. And then we've got the instrumentation screen and design. Rob, anything?
Yeah, that's me. I have done nearly every screen. I am just on the dashboard's listing screen sort of view. I've done the empty state for that and doing the other state. So I'm hoping I should have that out to Jan and Sam to get some initial feedback on all the terrible things I've done and how to make it better today, hopefully. And awesome. If anyone has any ideas on alternative ways to design stuff, please tell me when I share it.
Cool. All right, we got tracking usage with the new tracker internal handbook. This one's currently blocked, pending a production readiness review. Yeah, I think this is more blocked by me more than anything, so I'll just speak to it. So I'm going to be working on that today once I get the Sandbox Cloud environment provisioned for the group, which I have a later point to talk about. But yeah, I think that covers that issue. Axel is not here, so we can't speak to the loading state for customizable dashboards, so we'll continue on. Carrying on with what I was saying before, there's some conversations that need to happen with both infrastructure and security, just to make sure we're good to go with the change to basically instrument the internal handbook. Was hoping to do that earlier this week, but the Sandbox Cloud and our domain names expiring or going away is a little bit more important to be able to collect data if we need to be able to send events somewhere. So we've been working on that, but we'll update it as soon as we can. It seems like so far there's no major concerns. They are classifying the data we are collecting even with IP address as yellow data, so that's great. It means that the data we're collecting doesn't require us to have any special treatment or restrictions or things like that. So far it's looking good. And then moving on to the line chart.
Yeah, so I just started with this. This is a good little intro into what we're, I guess, trying to accomplish here with the dashboards. I've mostly today been stuck in the surrounding infrastructure to this. So I've updated the documentation on our GitLab UI for charts because that was a bit, yeah, it was like a high context space for me, and just wanted to make it simpler for the next person also to figure out like how to use eCharts and what all the options are that we're passing. And also I have a agenda item that we just follow up on, or just get a check-in on where we are with the schema, since that also impacts the change they're making. So yeah.
Perfect segue into the schema. Max, anything here?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I think there's a point in number 5 to talk about it, but basically
Sure.
like to get it wrapped up. But let's come to it as the agenda.
Okay. All right. The last 2 items are in review and Axel, so we can follow up on that later. I think we haven't really been tracking.
I can comment on those.
Okay, please.
Just so the admin settings is in initial front end and back end review. It's had a few rounds. Hopefully this will be the final round. I'm actually reviewing it right now. And the second item, we could actually close it off. I feel like we could just remove the front end aspects of that and just close that off, Max, to be fair, rather than transferring it. We could just copy the,
Sure.
the enable disable settings bit into the other issue, because the only reason it was split was just because we weren't sure when you were going to be able to get to it, because you got to it so quickly before front end was even done. It makes no sense. It's just a check button. We can just close it off. It's fine.
Fine. Yeah. Go for it.
Cool.
So-
I'll make that change.
Okay, thank you. All right. We haven't really been tracking closed issues, but I know we've done a bit and there's some new ones in here. I feel like the basic blocks and upwards has been new, but I'll just leave it to the group to, if anything, they would like to call out as far as completed items here. Looks like we got the license check behind, and we also removed the dead code from the former attempt to do product analytics. So that's great.
That was a very satisfying thing to work on.
Yes.
Those front end ones that have been closed off, I think they're just closed off because of the previous work around widgets and dashboards. I think they're duplicates.
Fair enough. Okay, good. Then I will just save this as a bookmark and we can refer to it next time. Cool. Then I believe that wraps up the board review, unless there's anything else anyone would like to bring up. Otherwise, we've got a couple agenda items related to that. All right, Jan, you've got the next agenda item.
Sure. So I just wanted to check in on what's still remaining for us to define the version 1 of the user dashboard schema. I know there's still one remaining open question from Tim regarding how we're going to define stuff like date ranges on the dashboard and how that's also going to then be inherited by or override widget definitions. But in terms of anything else, yeah, I see, Max, you also have a point, and then also the following agenda item for this.
Yeah, so I think I'm working on the assumption at this point that it's not going to change a huge amount. I think that the discussion that you and Rob obviously had was a really, really good step forward. So that was good. There is that still open conversation with Tim, who's out today. So I would like to have agreed a version 1 schema by the end of this week, if possible. Just because I'm kind of limited to how much backend work I can do while that's still in flux. I'm making some assumptions at this point, like title and description for a dashboard is probably unlikely to change. But the actual relationships between like widgets and figures and stuff like that, I'm aware that that might not be exact yet. So let's see where that conversation with Tim goes, and hopefully we can nail something down by the end of the week. In terms of adding a due date, let's add a due date for the end of the week to the issue, because at least then we can say, you know, this would be good. And also, you know, we're doing it in such a way where the schema can be iterated on anyway in the future, so that's fine.
Would you find it beneficial to have like a working session on this, or should you just say, would you just say like having a due date and having anyone to voice the concerns? Like,
I would say
enough?
so. I think that there's only one unresolved thread on that issue, which I think we can definitely resolve by the end of the week.
Got it. All right. Sounds good then.
Cool. Due date
cool.
added.
Thank you. So yeah, the next issue leads into the next point leads into that. I've started some backend work to basically process those YAML definitions, convert them into Ruby objects, and make them available to 2 endpoints, one of which would make a list of dashboards for a project available, and one would make more data about those dashboards available. The first of which I've started an MR on, but there are 2 or 3 open questions on that issue. I know Sam's already fed back about them. But yeah, if there's any more information that any more questions that people have about that before I get too deep into it, that would be good. I've added a REST endpoint in my sort of first draft MR, but you know, Sam's raised a good point that we are GraphQL first, and I don't really have a strong opinion either way. So yeah, it's just something to have a look into async when you get a chance.
I am
Cool.
curious
I've got
about the
the next-
minimum. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to move on to the next one.
I mean, we can talk about it in the thread, but I will just leave a thought of I am curious what we think the minimum role required to view dashboards would be, given that our lowest one, I believe, is also labeled reporter. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, happy to hear everyone's thoughts there.
Yeah, I've been working on the assumption of developer because currently the proxy API to Cube is developer or higher. So it just kind of followed that this would, you know, if you can make a request to Cube, then you probably also need that same permission to see those outputted dashboards.
Yeah.
But again, that can absolutely change at this point. We're all behind a default off feature flag and nothing kind of works in production. So there's no dealing with breaking or anything like that.
I lean developer as well, as I think more from a semantics point of view, what would make sense there. But that's a long discussion that doesn't have to happen right now. So Sam, you have the next point.
And not to move on from the other one just yet. In general, I think this is an area we're going to have to circle back to and put a lot more nuance around in the future. Because if we want to go down the route of having embedded dashboards, those will need to be public, maybe, or maybe have some lighter access restrictions. Or if you're aggregating, say, red data with your apps data, maybe that is even maintainer only. So I think this is somewhere where we should make a choice for now with the expectation we'll need to revisit it to make more nuanced access controls in the future.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Something we should all bear in mind as developers as well.
Yeah. So my next point, I want to signal boost. I created an OKR issue for our group for the coming quarter. This is going to be the first OKR our group has had, so I'm pretty excited about it. Feel free to add feedback, or if you think we should be doing something different, completely open to that. Really what the OKR I'm proposing about is about us setting up our direction for where we want to go, communicating it to everyone in the company and the public, and then starting to execute on that vision, primarily being by getting the instrumentation of the internal handbook completed. So that's what's there. Again, happy to hear feedback, either sync or async. Dennis, to your question, so I linked to where this change to using GitLab as our single source of truth instead of Ally is. I believe this is just for product OKRs. I'm not sure if this also encompasses the rest of the company or not.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I wasn't asked to make OKRs an Ally for this quarter and for analytics, but I imagine yeah, I would prefer to keep it in GitLab, because what we ended up doing for Ally anyways was like draft them in GitLab, copy them over to Ally, run them in Ally, and then eventually feed them back into GitLab. So it was like, what is the point of Ally then? Excuse me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will probably mirror that just to keep things simple. But I was just curious if it was a company mandate, which I would have been very excited about. But to your point, I mean, for the OKR, just to throw something out there synchronously, how do we, is it too ambitious to think about instrumenting.com in the next quarter? That's the entire group I need to ask.
I guess it depends on how well the handbook goes. The answer to that, if we find our infrastructure is falling apart around us, we might need considerably more time to figure out options. Not saying it will, but just as the case. Or the
there is a
JS
target.
Can't handle
There's an
what we need.
OKR. Sorry, Rob. But there's an OKR target as well. I can never remember what it is, but they should be ambitious enough that you won't hit them all the time. I can't remember what it is, like 80% or something. Like I like that as an idea. We can say, let's instrument GitLab.com, and we can define quite tightly what instrument means. Like we can install Jitsi in, or our JS SDK in .com. Whether or not we're providing valuable data at the end of it is another question. I don't know. I feel like there might be a way we can constrain it so that it's still ambitious but not impossible.
And it's quite constrained already, because we're only tracking direct contributors to the project, right? It's not anyone that hits it. So we're not expecting it to be like millions of events a day or anything like that. But at the same time, we can still even apply finer grained controls to even say a percentage of audience that even meets this criteria to begin with could do that. So I just would like to see, I mean, consider me challenging us to see if we can push a little further beyond the handbook, since we're kind of knocking on that door already. And we still have 1 month left in this quarter. So
I started the OKR out as that and pulled back. The reason being that this is going to encompass the new year. So I figured we'd have a lot less availability due to holidays. We're also going to need a lot more notice period, probably at least 2 weeks, since we'll be doing this in public. And I wasn't sure if the sequencing of that made it realistic or not. If you all tell me you think that's achievable, though, I'm certainly happy to make it more ambitious.
I think it's achievable. I like that word.
It's definitely possible.
Yeah, especially with how if for example, once we get to .com infrastructures, you really need to have separate environments for this. I don't have any problem spinning up multiple environments. That's at GitLab's cost. So from a technical lift point of view, granted, there's a lot of instrumentation and things that have to happen. And what I mean by instrumentation is us monitoring how the cluster is performing so that we have other questions that we need to answer. That still has to be figured out. But in terms of just hitting the goal of being able to collect data from .com, I think that's realistic. But yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and update this OKR asynchronously then to incorporate that. Because if we think it's ambitious but also achievable, I'm all for it.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for entertaining that.
You got the
cool.
next bit.
Thanks. This is just a heads up that I need everyone in the group that wants access to the cloud environment. That doesn't mean you can't send data to it, but if you feel like you'll need access to the cluster, which we can debate least amount of access or whatever, zero trust, whatever. But for me to create the group environment, I just want everyone to sign into the Sandbox Cloud realm. All you need to do is just hit the Okta button, authenticate via Okta, and once you're in, you're good to go. That way I can have everyone added to the group environment. I believe I can add you after the fact, but just wanted to send the notice out now that, it'll be better if you do it sooner rather than later. For those that don't remember, the GitLab internal project on GCP, which is currently what's controlling the prototype.gitlab.com DNS zone, if it hasn't already, will be deleted this week. So there's a little bit of a migration that has to happen with our current test cluster. So that's that notice. And then also I just kind of wanted to signal boost this. I did post some instructions on how you can import the data set that was currently in the test cluster into your local environment so that you have some data to work with as far as dashboard's concerned. So I'm looking for feedback on how difficult that process is, because eventually that'll be turned into something where we can see the local environment, so that you can have data to work with whenever we are working with dashboards. So looking for feedback there. Rod has a read-only point, unless you'd like to vocalize it. Otherwise, Sam, you have the next point.
Yeah, so I just wanted to signal boost that we now have a stable counterpart from the privacy and product legal team. That's going to be Eugene McCran. So if you have any sort of questions related to product privacy or legal concerns, he is our primary person of contact. We should expect him to pop into meetings occasionally or chime in on issues. So feel free to say hello or set up a coffee chat if you're so inclined. And with that, we are at the end of our agenda. Any other topics folks want to go through before we break? All right, well, sounds good. Have a good Tuesday, everyone. We'll talk soon.
Take
See ya.
care.